POV. It's the late 90s and early 2000s, and Christina Milian is the new it girl. From Kim Possible, yes, to landing acting roles, and even landing the lead role in a movie. Becoming an it girl,
kind of like the it girl
in urban media, they attempted to meld Christina into the pop star and R&B girl class of the early 2000s. They never knew which direction to take her. So from her hit single Dip It Low to being dropped by her label nearly a week after an album release, a potential J-Lo beef, and almost being the Rihanna before Rihanna was Rihanna, mixing business and pleasure with her relationships always being in the spotlight. What happened to Christina Milian? When she was younger and first came out, her potential seemed infinite. And although it's always Christina keep a job Milian, did she not reach her full potential? Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and I'm back at it again with another video. And today we are going to be talking about what happened to Christina Milian, another installment in my What Happened To series. I am so eager to do this one today. I have had people asking me to do this for a good while, and I've been reflecting, and I was watching Love Don't Cost a Thing the other day. Kept all the memories flooding back. And I was like, wait a minute, like if you grew up in the 2000s, you knew Christina Milian. And personally, as a little girl, I was in awe by her beauty, her fashion, her style. At some point, I'm pretty sure I wanted to be just like her when I grew up. But many people have pondered what happened to her pop career. A lot of people don't even know that she had a music career, pivoted into acting, and then transformed into a businesswoman and a socialite, which some people looked at quite controversially. Her career could have literally went anywhere. It's a what if situation. So I want to discuss her journey, her career beginnings, her music career, and dissect that. Acting, the scandals, because there's quite a few, and where she is today. It was kind of giving jack of all trades. And one big question I have with Christina's career is, was she too distracted by everything she had her hand in? Comment down below, what do you guys think of Christina's story? What's the most interesting thing that you learned today? Kick your feet up, get something to drink. I know I have one. Hit that subscribe button down below if you would like to see more commentary content just like this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today and supporting the channel. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So today we're going to start off talking about her early beginnings. So Christina Milian was born Christina Flores on September 26, 1981 in Jersey City, New Jersey. So we finally have an East Coaster. Shortly after she was born, her family decided to move to Waldorf, Maryland. Now you may ask, so her last name is not Milian? Well, it technically is. It's her mother's maiden name, her mother's maiden last name. But when she joined the showbiz, she did decide to change her last name from Flores to Milian. She felt like she got more roles when she changed her last name to Milian because it was a bit more ambiguous, and also with her parents being Cuban immigrants and her ethnicity being Afro-Latina, she didn't get roles for certain places.
When I first started my career, it was really difficult because I'm Hispanic, and when I got to Hollywood, I can go anyway. I'm Black Hispanic, so I go for all types of roles.
Right.
But I couldn't go for a Latina role because they said I didn't look Latina enough. And then for a Black role, they were like, well, her last name is Flores, so we don't even want to see her.
Now, Christina is the eldest of three girls, her sisters being Danielle and Elizabeth, whom we will briefly talk about later as they do intertwine with her story later on. But Christina knew at an early age that she wanted to be in show business. As early as 4 years old, they realized she was as serious as she could be. She details one story of her literally trying to jump into the TV, and that's when her parents knew, we got to do this. We have to make this happen.
My mom caught me one day trying to unscrew the television, and she was like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm trying to get inside the television. I want to be inside the TV. She was like, oh my goodness.
So around 9 years old, they did embark on this journey, and she auditioned for local talent agencies and landed some commercials here and there. But one thing I was really surprised to learn is that Christina started out as a Broadway girl. So she would do little musical theater plays locally, and that's really how she started to marry the acting to the music. Now, she did land the lead role in the Annie play, and she was in a musical theater group that traveled around the country and did some shows as a child, and she found herself performing in LA. And tons of agents, local talent agencies, etc. were there, and they had interest in Christina and wanted them to stay.
Landed in Los Angeles for like a month. We performed in Los Angeles. Michael Jackson even came to see our show. And while I was there, then agents came to that show, and then they asked me to stay in Los Angeles.
So her mom saw those potential opportunities. There really wasn't much anymore for them on the East Coast. And because they were starting to see tangible success, she became her momager and moved Christina and her other daughters to LA when she was just about 13 years old. And this did cause some strain on the family unit and resulted in Christina's parents splitting, which also becomes very relevant to this story and some of the hardships she would go on to face. So let's talk about Hello Hollywood. Christina was concerned with acting initially. She wasn't really wrapped into trying to launch a music career, but always in the back of her mind, she did want to be involved in music some way, somehow. It felt like God's plan when after 6 months of living in LA, and they ended up moving into a new apartment complex and met several working producers who lived in the same vicinity. One of them being Rodney Jerkins. Yes, the songwriter and producer extraordinaire. But at this time, Rodney Jerkins was only about 18 years old, and he was still on the rise. He was working with people like Brandy and Destiny's Child, discovered her and took her under his wing.
And yeah, I met him when I was 13. I was really interested in singing, and I moved to Los Angeles for my career for acting and singing. Right. And I met him, and he really did help me out, like inspiring me with writing and producing music. And I would meet all these big people in the studio, like Brandy and Deborah Cox.
Again, Hollywood is small and networking is everything. And this is a quintessential example as to why people move to LA, why people move to Hollywood, because you could meet somebody who lives next door to you, somebody who lives down the hall, somebody who lives down the street without even having to go to an audition, and boom, that's your big break. So that proved to be true for Christina, or at least influential to her journey. And so for a year and a half, she went to the studio every single day and worked with him, helping him starting to record demos, seeing his writing process, his producing process.
I met a lot of different people, like, people from Babyface's camp. People they were trying to find girls, like, to sing or to be in girl group.
And at this time, when she came out to LA, she did land a major gig, stepping her feet into the Disney world by becoming a host of Disney Channel's Movie Surfers. So it was essentially like this mini series where kids go behind the scenes, they interview cast members on these movie sets, and give the kids some insight. So Christina hosted the show in 98 and 99, my birth year, thank you very much. And she actually went by the name Tina. While all of this sounds great, and while it sounds like up until this point, Christina was fairly lucky, there was a lot going on at home that a lot of people did not know. Her home life was really rough, and after her parents split because her mom took her and her sisters to move to LA and her dad decided to stay back, they had to fend for themselves. She describes being cut off financially. They didn't have money for food. They were on the brink of eviction every other day. Meanwhile, Christina's still out here trying to book auditions, and little gigs here and there were keeping the lights on, but you could see what was at stake for her at this point. She details one very specific story that outlined, we need to make this happen.
They give away food to those that need it. And we went there because we had no food. And they gave us, all the necessary needs that we needed. And when we went home and I started opening the box, and as we're walking and I'm looking, like, there's ants in the boxes and stuff. And I'm crying. And my mom, she said to me, Christine, we made this promise to each other on that walk back home that we were going to focus, that we were going to sacrifice.
And her mom locked in. And that's when everything really took off. So this was when, at 17 years old, she really started to dive deep into songwriting and finally crafting a demo record. So that way she could send them to A&Rs and labels to finally snag a record deal. And Christina would detail this time. This is when she really started to songwrite. Every time I recorded a song, the producer wouldn't give me the demo, or they would write lyrics that I didn't agree with, or a song I didn't like. So I just had to take it upon myself to write a song and send out my own demo. Self-sufficiency. Now by this point, guys, guys. She wasn't really working with Rodney Jerkins at the time. He probably got kind of busy, and they did talk about signing a deal, but it just kind of fell through. So she had to move on and start making shit shake herself. Now, I do want to circle back real quick because Christina still had her eyes set on acting. Essentially, her saying that being a Disney kid kind of saved her life and made things a lot easier for her when getting a record deal, because remember, at the time in the late 90s, early 2000s, pop music was booming. That bubblegum pop sound, that boy band pop sound. A lot of these kids were getting poached and snatched right up from Disney Channel. And that was kind of like a prerequisite. And Christina kind of had that under her belt. And around this time, she also landed minor roles, little walk-on roles on shows like Sister Sister. She was in Smart Guy, The Steve Harvey Show, the show Get Real, the movie The Wood, and American Pie. So little cameos here and there. Whether you realized it or not, Christina was planting small seeds in pop culture. Her face is in there, often fading into the background, however, as a supporting extra, but she was destined to find her way to the forefront. It was coming. So let's talk about her launching her music career. In the midst of all of her small acting roles, it was time to seize the music world. She actually hopped on her first pro musical appearance, a song with Ja Rule called Between Me and You. In 2000, and it was his second album's lead single. It was a charting success, reaching as high as number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100. Where there is Ja Rule, J-Lo is never far behind, y'all know. Christina co-wrote and performed vocals on a song called Play for J-Lo's 2001 album, and this would end up being what led to speculation about a alleged beef years later, which we will get to in the scandal section. She also co-wrote a song for the girl group PYT that released in 2001. We also have to remember she was writing a demo. She flew to New York City and met with a couple big players in the industry. And it really caught the attention of Island Records and Def Soul Records. And she was only around 19 at this time. A label that was formed by Russell Simmons and would go on to represent talent such as Musiq Soulchild, Kelly Price, Drew Hill, 112, Patti LaBelle, and the Isley Brothers. I know, quite the interesting mix of talent, but they were very interested in representing Christina. And reflecting back, Christina herself has said it. She didn't have the most amazing voice, and she couldn't really dance. She was never formally trained in dancing.
When I look at it, I'm like, I didn't sing that great, and I wasn't dancing, you know what I mean? But I had enough of a chance and a glow that walked in, and they were like, they saw it.
So she was kind of surprised in hindsight that she was able to just walk into that record label room and get that deal. Even R&B a little bit, like the early 2000s, they weren't really looking for a vocalist like that. So she was young, she was cute. They wanted to kind of hit that teen, young adult market. So she would then travel to Sweden to begin recording her debut self-titled album. Christina would tour as an opening act on NSYNC's Pop Odyssey tour, starting in May 2001. That's a huge freaking deal. So clearly they were kind of trying to appeal to the teen market, but she shared the same manager as NSYNC, and I believe Britney Spears as well. So they were able to create these awesome connections for her. So for Christina's self-titled album, she would end up being credited on 11 of 12 tracks on the album. But the album was released in Europe on October 2001, and Japan in January 2002. It did well in the UK, reaching number 23 and also number 20 in Japan. But you might say, where was the America release? Let's talk about it, because I think this was also a little detrimental to her introduction to the US market. The album was actually scheduled to be released about 2 weeks after 9/11. Yes, 2001. Its domestic release was canceled due to the horrific terrorist attacks. Mourning time for the nation, and a lot of things changed. The trajectory of music changed. A lot of projects canceled or delayed in release because it just was not the proper nor appropriate time. Now, the two singles from the album were AM to PM and When You Look at Me, both of which charted well internationally. AM to PM was popular with audiences and charted at number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100. Yes, so this single, AM to PM, did release prior to her album. Okay, so it did release in the States. And although When You Look at Me didn't, it found greater success overseas. Christina was building an international fan base. But the point of these singles, if you listen to them, yes, they kind of had an R&B feel to it, but it was absolutely like this teen pop, leaning more towards like this bubblegum pop sound. Now, the critique of the album has mixed to positive reviews. Leaving the nest for some years, doing some stuff outside of Disney, she came back when she sang the iconic theme song for Kim Possible, Call Me Beat Me, which released in 2002. And that same year, she was asked to host a new competitive music series on MTV called Wannabe. So she's network hopping. I think they're really trying to figure out where she fits best. Is it better like in this pop bubblegum lane, kind of like a teen icon, very PG, whatever, clean cut? Or do we want to mix her in with like the R&B crowd, the hip hop crowd? What do we want to do? And that's been kind of a push and pull for her. Moral of the story, folks, networking is absolutely everything. And the director of this show, Joseph Kahn, suggested that she audition for the lead role in a movie called Torque. And although she wouldn't land the lead role, she would still get a supporting character role in the movie. So she ended up landing her first lead role. Love don't cost a thing. So the film was released in December 2003, where she starred alongside Nick Cannon. My comfort film, to say the least. Christina landed this role with ease. Actually, they came to her, and the green light of the film for Warner Brothers picking it up was based off of Christina's acceptance on the role.
They said they want me to do this movie. And back then it wasn't even with Warner Brothers yet. They got the green light off of me, off of my name.
The movie is a remake or reimagining of the 1987 film Can't Buy Me Love. Essentially a story about a nerd, Calvin Johnson, Nick Cannon, who works out a deal with Miss Popular Paris Morgan, Christina Milian's character, and they initially pretend to date as repayment for him fixing the car that she crashed, her mother's car that she crashed. They come up with a deal to fake date for 2 weeks so that he can become more popular. She gives him a makeover and he actually becomes cool. They fall in love, blah, 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 blah. You guys already know, typical rom-com plot. Boom. But it opened at number 4 at the American box office, making around $21 million total. And to my surprise, I grew up loving this movie. The film got fairly negative reviews. And that was perhaps people's gripes with it. But this was like the black version. So like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. You know what I mean? Like if you don't culturally understand the references, like it's going to go over your head. But this further helped put Christina on the map. And it landed her a boyfriend, Nick Cannon, who we'll talk about later. So let's talk about the limbo of it all. Now over at her label Def Jam, there was some holdup and confusion happening in regards to her music career. Christina didn't understand what they wanted her image to be. Even after her debut album, the marketing was just confusing, if we're being quite honest, and Christina knew this. To the press, she would describe her songs as hip-hop, undertone with a little pop, and would later also say about the same music that her genre was bubblegum pop. So like even to the press, everyone was like, what are you trying to do? Did they want her to be a mini like Latin Britney? Or did they want her to take the Aaliyah and Maya route? Christina early on wasn't thrilled with her image, knowing that it confused her audience. Planting, I would say, the first nail, one of the first nails in her music career coffin. Remember though, her label Def Soul faced financial strife around 2003. They had to kind of go to the drawing board. They had to scale back and they decided to essentially focus on their R&B veterans. And Christina obviously did not make that cut. She was signed to Def Jam's sister label, umbrella label, I don't know, Island Records. She was jumped to this label, this imprint, this one. She was kept being moved around.
I don't want to keep confusing the audience because Def Jam did it to me all the time. One day I would be Def Jam, then I'd be Def Soul, then I'd be Island. Like they switched me around so many times at the label over me, even as a pop artist and an R&B artist. I was always in between these things where people were trying to make me make choices.
And she got to work on her new album. She also appeared in a video game, Def Jam Vendetta, as a non-playable character in 2003. It was modeled after her, so that was another notch on her belt. And her second studio album, or first domestic release, was called It's About Time, which released in July 2004. Again, mixed reviews on the project. While people felt like she had her club tracks in the bag, like they were cute, they worked, they were fun, her ballads felt flat. A reporter called the album, quote, fun but formulaic, struggling to find an identity of her own. Many people noted the sonics being akin to Beyonce's sound at the time or J-Lo's sound. which is kind of ironic in the grand scheme. But I've noticed that Christina is fairly intuitive, and she really should have trusted her gut a lot more. Although she did write a lot of songs on the second album as well, Christina did say that she wrote what she thought other people would want to connect with or hear from her versus what she actually liked. And it showed. Again, creating a lack of individual identity and voice. Had she had decided to just go based off of what she wanted to do and to control, we might have been looking at a different story. And there was one song from that album that stood above the rest and was released as a single. Dip It Low. Yeah. The song was a charting success and peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. So yes, her biggest song to date. But, did she kind of have to sell her soul to get it? Let's talk about it. So a little bit later on, Christina did reveal that the single and album's imagery was kind of for pure shock value. For a period, she had a lot more success in the UK, definitely during her debut era. So once she was trying to transition back into the US market, her team decided to go with a sexier image for shock factor. She had also grown up. She was older. She was in her 20s now, her early 20s, so it wasn't completely inappropriate, but it was a stark difference.
I had a look at your video. You're like a dirty woman now.
Dirty woman.
What happened to you?
No, it's art.
It's art?
It is art.
The Dip It Low video was the classic I'm grown up, changing her image a bit, lightening her hair, and actually, due to the Beyonce comparisons that she was getting at the time, like via her music sound, many people kind of thought, like the press, saying that she had dyed it to look a little more like Beyonce, which she denied, but that was also kind of going on at the time. Christina said that the attention from the video wasn't all bad, but she was slightly concerned with how her new image would be perceived by younger fans. It's this classic tale of being introduced to the industry as an adolescent and trying to find your maturity and your footing as an adult. Unfortunately, in the industry, we know that they tend to skip to sex versus finding a middle ground, the in-between. And since that release, she did make a conscious effort and a choice that she didn't really need to go that far ever again. But we have to admit it worked for her, and that's what she needed at that moment to turn heads and catch attention. Now, to promote her second album, she was an opening act on Usher's tour in 2004 alongside Kanye West, and again, charting very well in the UK. It was big for Christina as she earned a Grammy nomination for Best Contempt R&B Album in 2005, and for her song Dip It Low, earning a Grammy nomination for Best Rap/Sung Collab. But to conclude this era, hoping to keep the momentum from Dip It Low, she released another single, Whatever You Want, featuring Joe Budden in September 2004. However, it did not reach the success of Dip It Low by any means, and again performed better in the UK. It also charted well all over Europe. All over, revving up her acting engine again. Following her second album, she starred in the film Be Cool in 2005, alongside people like John Travolta, Uma Thurman, a star-studded cast, to say the least. This was a huge deal for Christina. She was even able to record an original song for the soundtrack, and she did begin expressing the difficulties in juggling her acting and her music career at the same time. Because think about it, a great script may land on your desk, and you want to take it and it's good money, but she's also overconsumed with her music obligations. And she said this multiple times, that the music industry was a lot more shifty and a lot harder. The politics were a lot deeper. At a period, the label was pushing for her, like, you need to focus on singing.
I loved doing everything. People try to break me away from doing one or the other. Like the label would be like, she has to do music. Don't give me these labels, actor or singer, pop or R&B, or this or that. I'm like, I can do all of these things.
And maybe that's why both of those skills at some point felt underdeveloped. It's great when you're young, do it all, do what you can do. And in hindsight, I think it was good for her because her music career would end up stalling. So at least she had all of this on her resume, and she did all of this while she could. But I also think that it contributed to not being able to really craft and hone one or the other very, very well. So we went back to the drawing board again. I've noticed that there were so many inside opinions on Christina's career, what her demographics should be, what style of music she should make, how should she dress. It was a constant back and forth, and that perhaps is why her music career was never able to find and hold major momentum. We know her previous albums were pop, then R&B, and then Island Def Jam encouraged her to go with more of an urban record next go around. So L.A. Reid put her in the studio with producers Cool and Dre, and they had a heavy hand in her third studio album, So Amazing. The synergy was good and palpable, so they ended up producing 10 out of 11 tracks on this album, completing it in just 3 months. Remember, a lot of Christina's critique from the press was each album just doesn't feel consistent. It feels a little all over the place. So she thought, working with the same producers, boom, we're gonna create more of a cohesive sound. So Amazing was released in May 2006. Its lead single, Say I, featured Young Jeezy, and it did see some success. In the UK specifically, peaking at number 4 on their singles chart and reached number 21 in the US. For her to come out with another sound switch, it could have went a lot worse. Not being honest. But her album sales did see a dip compared to previous releases. However, it still peaked at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 200 chart, an album heavily laced between the breakup with Nick Cannon around this time. We'll get there. It inspired the material with Christina hoping to appear more personal. She had something to talk about. She was going through some real shit in the media. But once again, reviews for this album were mixed, although Christina said she aimed to be more personal and more vulnerable, show a different side of her. One review said, quote, "This album could only scratch the surface of who she really is." It lended itself to this consistent critique of her not being distinctive musically, perhaps a bit bland. And after being around this long, it's cute for the first album. Okay, we can work with that. The second album, it was her first domestic release, so people are like, okay, she's finding it. But after your third album and people are still saying that you're not finding it, people could not connect to her personality through her music. They weren't grasping it. Now, there were also people who did feel like So Amazing was her best album, cohesive-wise. So she was making some progress, but it was still split. Unfortunately, about a week after her third album release, her label kicked her to the curb. They kicked her to the curb, y'all. Now, she believes it was due to budget cuts because they ended up cutting a significant chunk of their roster.
When I got dropped from Def Jam, like that in itself was like, I was in the height of just putting out my 4th album, I believe. Within 1 week, out of nowhere, they dropped me and a bunch of other artists, like just because they were just making a cut of like an artist cut.
No warning.
No warning at all. I was about to go on MTV, honey. I was about to go on MTV. I had a cover of Vibe magazine. Everything was set, and out of nowhere, bloop.
Now, Christina said her label knew that this record may not have immediate success. Remember, they were going more for an urban sound. So sometimes it's going to take time to get people on board. Boom. Claiming that they would work with her and support her regardless of the outcome. We're going to work this album. About 2 weeks later, after she released that album, L.A. Reid called her up, and said, hey, we're dropping you. You've been dropped from the label. Sorry. That momentum, who's funding it? Who's funding the videos? Who's booking you for these late night shows? Who's funding the projects? Who's funding the performances? Exactly. So it would end up kind of going down the gutter from there. Now, it's also theorized that Island Def Jam wanted to spend more money on her rising label mate, Rihanna. Okay? Wanting to put as many resources into her sophomore project, A Girl Like Me. And fun fact, Christina turned down a duet with Rihanna, which was going to be SOS. And that would become a hit single for Rihanna. And Christina details why she turned it down at the time.
Actually, I got offered to do a duet with Rihanna on SOS. I was doing a more urban, approach of music, and when I heard SOS, I liked the song, but the thing was, it reminded me of AM to PM and the opposite. It reminded me of going pop again. Like, they switched me around so many times at the label, I finally had to, like, stand up for something and be like, okay, L.A. Reid said we're going to be urban. This is what we're going to do.
Again, proving that her label was kind of her biggest downfall because they were not creating a sustainable marketing plan for her. And it sabotaged her in the end. Because that could have been another hit single for her. Overall, Christina says it was embarrassing being dropped like that. It was a week after my album got put out. I would be in my room a lot of the time crying. She put on her acting hat again and landed a lead role in a horror film called Pulse, which released August 2006. Starring alongside Kristen Bell, it's an English adaptation of a 2001 Japanese film. Didn't receive the most favorable reviews. In fact, a lot of people felt like it was horrible. But it even made the list for, quote, Halloween Gone Wrong, the least scary movies of all time. Didn't really do much for her. It was kind of viewed as yet another cheap interpretation of a well-written, well-executed Japanese horror film. And during filming this movie, it took place in Romania. Christina was stuck over there, and she revealed a lot of emotional turmoil was happening in her life while filming this movie. So we got to talk about the career stall. Now, in May of 2007, it was reported to the media that she'd be the lead role in a CW show called 8 Days a Week as Olivia, starring alongside Mario Lopez. But the CW decided not to move forward with the show due to the 2007 Writers Guild of America strike. And once again, Christina was struck by another bout of bad luck. This was the year, however, she began her lasting stint in holiday movies, landing the lead role in an ABC Family Christmas movie called Snow Globe. And you guys know that she would go on to do more holiday movies, and that would kind of become her thing, her shtick. However, she wasn't quite done with music yet and was still eager to drop a fourth album. So she began working on it on that same year. So about 2007, 2008, something like that, that's when she started to work on it. It was originally going to be called Dream in Color, but was then retitled as Elope about a year or so later. But the album release was halted and halted and halted and halted. She was signed, however, to MySpace Records in 2008 and released a teaser of her single Us Against the World. That music video release, it did well view-wise, but it didn't really go anywhere. Wasn't a horrible song, a bit more ballady. She continued to work on the album in 2009, beginning her work with the producer, the songwriter, the artist, The Dream. Yeah, girl, this is just the beginning of their story. Regardless, she signed to his record label as well, Radio Killer Records, and in June 2009, The Dream claimed the album was finished. He was like, it's done. But the waiting persisted, and they also experienced their war-worn romance at the time, which we gonna get there, eloping and a baby. But while she was working with The Dream, she also ended up co-penning Baby that would be given to, yes, Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber, that was the thing that my ex-husband at the time, I was pregnant with my daughter, and it was one of those things that he asked me to like get on board to write with him. So that worked out for the song Baby.
We know she got a nice check from this because this song became one of the biggest pop culture moments in the 21st century thus far, right? So that was another thing. Christina this whole time was still writing hits and writing for other people. Like, I'm pretty sure she wrote Paula Deanda's Walk Away.
Hey, I'm actually receiving a pop award for Paula Deanda's Walk Away.
She wrote some other records for other people. She's written with Neo, all types of stuff. But in August 2009, she said she signed a deal to release her album, her fourth album, Elope, through Interscope Records, set for 2010, so probably a distribution deal. But she postponed the release due to being pregnant, due to her pregnancy. Amidst all of that, it's all intertwined, y'all. In September 2009, she starred in the straight-to-DVD film Bring It On, Fight to the Finish. That's one of my favorite Bring It On movies, y'all. I love that movie down. But as for her album, more excuses for the delay followed. It was getting ridiculous, saying she would redo some tracks in the summer and gain new inspiration again because life was happening to her. And at the 2010 AMAs, she said the album would be here in 2011.
And so you also have a new album coming out next year. What can the
year.
fans expect? What kind of secrets?
I'm really excited about that. It's going to be done through Interscope Records, and we're just getting started on revamping that album now.
Like, at this point, it's been a delay of almost 4 years. The nail was in the coffin on her music career at this point. But ultimately, the album would be shelved and never released. So they went through all of that just to never release the album. I know it's anticlimactic. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't make the story. I didn't write the story. But it never came out. We're going to put a pin in this, and we're going to take a pit stop for the scandals. Guys, we finally made it to the scandals, and we can address all of the things that I kept saying we're going to get there. We're going to get there. We're here. So one thing that's important to know is the perception of Christina, her relationships. She's been in a few high-profile, dramatic relationships, some with their fair share of mess, to the point where it did create rumors and a lot of judgment towards her, saying that she was dating some of these men and dating these guys in the industry to further her career along. But she also dated some other people that we're not really going to get into that were heavily intertwined in the music business. So it kind of created this reputation that she's getting with these guys to get further along, which there are problems with assuming that as well. You're naturally going to date people who are in the industry and that you rub shoulders with. But this is what people started to think, and that made people take her less seriously as time went on.
When it comes to relationships,
I've had a very public life when it comes to that. I've heard all.
So we'll talk about Nick Cannon. That was like one of her very first public relationships. They began dating in 2003 after co-starring in Love Don't Cost a Thing. So they did kind of fall in love on set with that movie. However, they would split in 2005. Christina claims that Nick cheated, and he kind of confirmed it.
I ended up, getting out there and wilding a little bit, but nobody saw me cheating. You know what I mean? I ain't get caught.
In 2019, all these years later, she would finally address the rumors, like give us exactly what happened in an E! News interview. At the time, she thought their relationship was in a good spot. He lived with her, he lived at her place, but she did suspect that he was being a little sneaky. Something was off, a woman's intuition. So she decided to hack into his phone. First try, put that password in, and boom, there were messages.
The password somehow worked on the first check, and I was right. And then next thing you know, I was reading for like a month. I was reading messages. I was stuck in Romania.
Oh, you had time?
Yes, I had time. So I was like, I cannot bust him while I'm away. I need to bust him in person.
And it led to their breakup, an inevitable demise. It, of course, bled into the media cycle where Christina would do interviews and was asked what happened. About her heartbreak, she was a little more vague, but alluded to the fact that he was unfaithful. And she'd even release a song, Who's Gonna Ride, which people took as a Nick Cannon diss. And we know for her third studio album, Amazing, she did write about this breakup experience. Their camps were all talking to the press. One of Nick's close friends would claim to the press, quote, she's leveraging his success and using his name for press. No one cares about Christina Milian. She's not Beyonce. Ouch. Ouch. One anonymous source, so take this with a grain of salt, but one anonymous source said, quote, that the entire time they filmed Love Don't Cost a Thing, Nick did have a girlfriend. He had a girl that he was kicking it with, but Christina allegedly didn't care. That's what they said. According to this anonymous source, was a little shisty. You say, you lose them how you get them. And a year later, in 2006, Nick would address the press directly, saying, quote, I was wrong for not being what she wanted me to be. But, quote, she knew from the jump we were friends for months before we even got into it. And when we got into it, I was like, yo, anything remotely like a relationship, I don't want any parts of it. Classic guy, classic dude excuse.
I tried to tell her I'm not I tried to tell her I wasn't ready. So therefore, it's kind of her fault because she went with it.
I had the baddest chick in the world, which Christina was. But it's still at the same thing. It's like our testosterone won't allow us to just buckle down and be like, all right, I want to be in a relationship. So, me being young, me saying, look, I want to be out there and, do my thing, but I was in love with it. So that was at the beginning. That's where it all started.
You acting like you were forced into a relationship. You weren't. And 20 years later after their relationship, in 2023, Nick Cannon said in a Shade Room interview that he wished he had had kids with Christina Milian back in the day.
When I found out she was pregnant, I don't think I did. I was like, dang, man. But I was so happy for her. But I remember that we was kids in love early on, and so that you talked about that, but,
Now, knowing how many women he would lay down with in the future, that kind of sounds like a threat. Christina, you dodged a bullet with that one. But yeah, their relationship, I think they reconnected a couple years later, like in 2018, something like that. We also have to talk about her relationship with The Dream, possibly one of her most notable public relationships that ended in flames. The Dream was a reputable artist and producer, and we know he worked with her on her fourth studio album that never came out. He was building his label, Radio Killer Records, and he was seeking out talent to feature on a couple of his songs, work with him, and Christina was there. But what began as a working relationship quickly blossomed into romance. But this relationship was a mess. One article said, quote, Christina Milian's life with a dream is turning into a nightmare. They ate that one. They ate that up. Just after a couple months they had been dating, they got engaged in July 2009. Yeah. And a short 2 months after getting engaged, they flew to Las Vegas and got eloped in September 2009. I could have told her that was a bad idea from a mile away, but sometimes you gotta live life. Just a month later, she announced that she was around 19 weeks pregnant. But the relationship would go down the drain and ended as quickly as it started. At the end of 2009, they separated, and he filed for a divorce months later. I try not to pass judgment too harshly. Okay, I really try not to. I don't know these people. But to file a divorce from your wife just 9 days before she's about to give birth feels really gross, evil, and unnecessary. Yeah, guys. He served her divorce papers 9 days before she was about to give birth to her first child. So then a few months later, no one really knew about all of this stuff going on behind the scenes, but a few months later, TMZ, the paparazzi, leaked photos of the Dream on a vacation, hugged up with another girl that was his assistant. Everybody's like, wait, I thought you were married to Christina. What's going on? So of course people called infidelity because we didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. But he came out and claimed that him and Christina have not been together for a while. However, Christina says that the waters were muddy. Yes, he gave her divorce papers, which she also claimed was wrong because she was in emotional duress when he served her. She was about to give birth. She was out of it. Like, it wasn't the right time for her to do that. And she said the water was still muddy, that he was still coming back, because now all of this leaked to the public and she was experiencing postpartum. She was a first-time mom, and the divorce was finalized in October 2011. That was also a lot in the press. They went their separate ways, attempting to co-parent initially though. It was tough. It was hard. But in 2012, Christina would come out saying that he was not showing up for their daughter.
Of like, parenting, and having another parent, that I really would like for her to have a father in her life, and I have to be 150 to 200% mom for her.
In a June 2012 interview, the Dream admitted that he didn't help out with a baby, saying, quote, "I don't, because my helping out turns into expectations. I'll get Violet on a late night, maybe 1 or 2 times, but after that, no. If Christina's tired, call the nanny, call Violet's granny, we got people." That's gross. But that was obviously traumatic for her. Last in our relationships, we got Lil Wayne. I don't know how Lil Wayne pulls the women he pulls. I don't know how he does it. But Christina and Wayne, similar to her in The Dream, began as a working relationship. She was signed to Young Money. He was helping her facilitate releases and get back in the music game. But the rest was history. Rumors began budding when they were seen at the ESPYs in July 2014 together, and they ended up coming out and dating mid-2014 to about August 2015. Amidst that, they collabed on songs together, they worked together. She'd even get a TNT tattoo, which stood for Tina and Tunchi. I'm telling y'all, the tattoo is always the kiss of death. As for the breakup, Christina kept it vague initially, saying that they had different priorities and it just didn't work out. But it was due to infidelity and untrustworthiness that would end up coming out. Christina would go on to have her own reality TV show. We'll detail that. But the breakup was featured on this season, and she did address the fact that she did some investigating and found out that there was some sneaky business going on.
I looked at her Instagram page and I saw a picture of her in some little shorts and a little sports bra, but it's in his house.
But not much was documented after the show. So we kind of got the initial reaction to everything, but we don't know how it played out. In her show, she was down bad. Y'all, she loved that man.
I've never loved anyone the way that I love Wayne. And not even my ex-husband. I've never loved anyone.
That's crazy. So she was down bad about that. But also that's kind of why it's not always good to mix business and pleasure, because what happens to your working relationship once you guys break up, especially in a fiery way? And I think that definitely hurt her chances in getting her career off the ground with Young Money.
Wait, you're still on Lil Wayne's record label. How does that work when you see him in the boardroom?
It still works just fine. Actually, we were able to separate the whole relationship thing with business.
Catch this, it was also kind of a scandal. The R&B singer Nivea had relationships and children with both The Dream and Lil Wayne prior to Christina. And Christina would go on to have relationships with both of them. Obviously, she had one kid with The Dream, so their kids share a dad. So they're they're half siblings. And then Nivea has kids with both of them. So Nivea was asked about this in interviews, and that became a whole spectacle.
I haven't addressed her about it. Okay. I don't really care to. I just thought it was very, very crazy.
Because a lot of people thought that there was drama between the two of them. But Nivea essentially was just like, please just don't have kids with Wayne, because, child, I don't need to explain to my kids that y'all share a daddy here, y'all share a daddy here, and that's why you guys are half siblings. It's confusing.
Oh, I only felt some kind of way because I was like, damn, what if she get pregnant? We already share siblings.
So they kind of got flack for that as well, and that was a big point of contention and conversation. And lastly, in the scandals, this is something that we are going to debunk or bunk today. J-Lo, the alleged J-Lo beef. As we know, guys, J-Lo was really crafting her musical solo career in the early 2000s, late 90s. And Christina was coming up in the industry. As mentioned, Christina helped co-pen J-Lo's 2001 single, Play. Christina wrote it for herself initially and was only 19 at the time.
Actually, I'd written it for myself originally, but I had just written my first single, AM to PM, and AM to PM and Play were kind of similar for me, so I was like, oh, Play, we'll just put it on someone else. And next thing I know, it ended up on J-Lo.
And this was before she even dropped AM to PM. This is before she dropped her own debut single, so this was all going on behind the scenes. We know J-Lo has been eyed as an easy target for being placed in some beef. And for a while now in Christina's story, fans and the media speculated that there were harsh feelings on Christina's end towards J-Lo for taking the song that was originally supposed to be on Christina's debut. However, that is far from the case. Christina was not upset at all. Tommy Mottola flew into one of her studio sessions, heard the song play, and wanted it for J-Lo. And he was like, can we have this? And she was like, sure, like you can give it to J-Lo.
A month later, the producers told me, oh, Tommy Mottola's coming in and he's gonna listen to some music. The guy comes in, he hears Play, loves it, and he's like, I want this as her single. And like, I don't like the song like that. I said, I got AM to PM.
Right.
I was like, AM to PM was my party song. I was like, there's no way they're gonna put 2 party songs on this album. I'm gonna keep AM to PM. Yes to J-Lo.
So she was never upset about that. It also isn't an uncommon occurrence in the industry. Oftentimes, artists will write these tracks, they'll demo the tracks initially meant for them, and because of the way that the industry works and having to make cuts, it might somehow end up on the shelf and end up with another artist. However, speculators didn't see it that way. We didn't have all those details at the time, especially not when the internet streets years later found out that they kept tons of Christina's background vocals on the track. Again, not necessarily an uncommon occurrence. It was all more scandalized because J-Lo's talent and contribution to her art has been constantly questioned over the years. Can she or can she not sing? Can she or can she not write? For example, when J-Lo's music career was lifting off the ground, it was accused that J-Lo was being used as a pawn to take down Mariah Carey. For example, Tommy Mottola, who is also Mariah Carey's ex-husband, and he's the CEO of Sony. But there's tons of stories that can be backed up that Tommy Mottola was actively using J-Lo as a way to stifle Mariah's success. And as for Christina's vocals being used on Play once J-Lo would cut the track, particularly in the chorus, you guys can hear her vocals loud, to the point where people are like, that's not J-Lo's vocals. And her vocals weren't credited as a featuring credit. Some people felt like it was another example of J-Lo cheating. And I think people feel this way because we end up knowing who Christina is. She became a front-facing figure. She had her own music career. She was known. So people kind of felt like you couldn't give her a feature credit. But you have to remember that this was before Christina became a known name. She hadn't even dropped AM to PM yet when Play was written. I see both sides of it because Christina was given credits as a songwriter and a background vocalist as well. So it was given credit, but some people felt like she should have been given a feature credit. And we also know a similar beef reported by the media between J-Lo and Ashanti. Ashanti demoed I'm Real, and they kept her ad-libs and backgrounds to where it's very noticeable. It's like using it to bolster up J-Lo's vocal presence because a lot of people feel like she doesn't have one. So it felt like what they call ghost singing. It felt like another iteration of that. Like J-Lo's kind of like using it as if it's her own vocals because it was less than like a background vocal, y'all. It was loud. Because you could argue, if you're a singer, and it's not anything crazy going on. We're not talking about some choir vocals or nothing. And let's say your voice does fit the style of the track. It's not this crazy, vocally hard song. You're a singer. Why don't you just sing them? Why do you need to turn up the reference vocals that high? Or they might say, oh, well, it added more flavor. Why don't you have it? That's a valid question in my opinion. But Christina would set the record straight all of these years later that she didn't see it the other way other people did. That there was nothing shady and that there's no beef.
And next thing I know, she's going to New York. She's in New York. She's recording the song. I came in to help rewrite some of the stuff. And yes, I sing backgrounds in it. It's no different than Michael Jackson having background singers on songs or Britney Spears. Like, this is what music is made of. You want a blend of voices. It makes songs better.
I do think it was a little blown out of proportion. Don't get me wrong. Okay? But Christina's vocals do sound mighty loud on that chorus, guys. And so this is what spawned rumors of like, dang, should Christina have had J-Lo's career and things like that? And I don't necessarily believe that to be true. I still think they were very different. And also, was Christina even that vocally crazy either? No. But it does beg the questions, and it continued the saga of how people felt about J-Lo. Back to the work. One thing about Christina Milian is she's gonna keep a job. It's Christina Miss Keep a Job Milian to you. She landed a gig as the official social media correspondent for The Voice Season 2, also making appearances on its live broadcast. And in 2012, Christina did leave her previous record label, Radio Killer Records, and signed with Young Money. And this led to her Lil Wayne collab, Hello, and later collabed on a song together called Start Fire, where they performed together at the 2014 AMAs. As we know, Lil Wayne and Christina would go on to date for a bit. Now, Christina was tapping into every business venture she could. There was no stone left unturned. When she signed on to do an reality series called Christina Milian Turned Up, remember reality TV at this time, especially after the Kardashians found fame and success on that network, I'm sure they were looking for ways to find a similar success. She got her sisters on board. The show aired in January 2015, and yes, I did watch it in real time. I was a fan of Christina. And I also was always wondered about what happened to her, like where'd she go? It followed Christina's day-to-day, her motherhood, and it also followed the lives of her sisters, Danielle and Liz, right? It focused on trying to get her music career off the ground again, her breakup with Lil Wayne, as well as her managing or building a mentor relationship with the group Sorority. I forgot about this, y'all. Yes.
All hell broke loose.
Don't waste my time.
You fucking all the fun out of this.
Then don't come in here.
Fine, let's go, let's go.
The show did fairly decent as it was renewed for a season 2 and premiered in November of 2015. And at this point, Christina was like a socialite. She definitely wasn't doing music like that. It wasn't doing super well. And she was gallivanting around town with her BFF, Karrueche. We all know that Karrueche dated Chris Brown for a period of time. And Instagram was popping off. So Christina has even admitted, hey, I had to stay relevant. So I had to put myself out there. I had to go to the hot spots. I had to find people.
But I had to figure out how to stay famous in Hollywood after getting dropped from the label. And but the thing was, it was going out, being popular, going to Robertson, doing the paparazzi snapping you. And so I figured that out. So I started to go out.
And that's exactly how Christina maintained a level of relevance. So she went that influencer and Instagram route. But she was absolutely questioned by her fans. What do you do anymore? Right? Many fans complain that she ditched her pop career, that she ditched her acting merely to be a socialite. Because it was kind of looked down at the time. Like, it was a new phenomenon. People didn't know how viable this whole influencer thing was. But people felt like she was too well connected in Hollywood and too talented to just be a BFF sidekick or to just be posting pictures on Instagram. And that was a sore spot for Christina. She'd go on to clap back at people for that. In March 2015, she did go back to releasing and creating music, releasing 2 new singles, Rebel, which I remember when that came out. I kind of forgot that she did music, and I listened to the song back when I was like a teenager, something like that. It's not the best song, but it wasn't horrible. I was there. And also her single, We Ain't Worried. They were used to promote her clothing line, We Are Pop Culture. Very tuned in, very tapped in to that 2015 sound.
Tell me what you finna do.
Right, we talk about this all the time. The DJ Mustard production that was hot at the time, and that's where she pivoted. And in December 2015, she released an EP called For You, which was preceded by a single with Snoop Dogg, as well as another single called Do It with Lil Wayne. This EP, however, was released independently on her old label called Millionaires Music. And wasn't really doing that big label thing anymore. In 2017, she was a judge on Fox's show called Superhuman, and soon after put all of her focus back into acting again. So there were a lot of personal developments in her life. She began dating Matt Pecora in 2017 and got married in 2020. They got married. And prior to officially tying the knot, they had a son in January 2020, and they had a second child together in 2021. Her husband is a successful French singer. Over there, he has some motion. He definitely has some motion. So later on, they would decide to set roots in Paris, France. She moved to France with her family in 2023.
You know, we have children. We have a 3- and a 4-year-old together, and we also have Violet. She's 14 years old, and so the kids are all in school now, so we committed to staying in Paris.
And she never lost the acting bug all the way. I do want to keep in mind that over the years, she's appeared in several shows. So from East Los High to Dora and Friends, Lip Sync Battle, Hip Hop Squares, The Oath, drop the mic, step up high water, etc. But for some bigger roles, in 2019, she starred in a Netflix rom-com called Falling in Love, a 2021 film called Resort to Love, and in 2024, she was in another Netflix rom-com called Meet Me Next Christmas. Stepping it up a notch, being credited as an executive producer on this project. And recently in 2025, she was cast as Maria LaGuerta in the Dexter prequel show called Dexter Original Sin. So yes, she is joining the iconic franchise. And this is a really big deal for her. This is one of the biggest roles she's landed in a minute. It aired through 2025 and it became Showtime's most streamed premiere, racking in 2.1 million global viewers. And over the years, she's tackled multiple business ventures. As an owner, she's had a wine company, a jewelry company, a pastry company called Beignet Box. So she really has her hand in absolutely everything you can think of. But through it all, I think she's really just been enjoying motherhood in all of its stages, right? She has 3 kids now. But I will say this, she has found many ways to meet success and pivot through her entire career, which is a talent in itself. It is not easy to stick around from the late 90s and still be here in the mid 2020s and still being booked. You know what I mean? And despite it not maybe looking like what people thought it would look like. And some people did, guys. There's still a lot of people that were like, Christina just didn't last because she didn't have the talent to back it up. With that being said, I mean, Christina looks amazing. She looks great. She still has that youthfulness about her. And she seems happy. I was really pleasantly surprised because I never really paid much attention to her interviews. But she seems like a delightful person. Like, she has a very good, bubbly personality. That is what happened to Christina Milian. What do you guys think of her story? Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. And I will see you guys in my next video.